While playing a video game, our main character, Kaga Michio, suddenly wakes up inside it. He wakes up as a level 1 villager in a stable, and as the game simply recreated his own self, he becomes a level 1 thief as well. He scans around for equipment, and gets some decent ones. Still thinking he is inside the game virtually, he sets out for some adventure. As he sets out, he witnesses a bandit attack, and some farmers fighting them. He notices the farmers being outnumbered, so he sneaks behind some of the bandits and uses his kendo skill to kill them all, as he believes they will be experience points. He checks his stats after the fight, and it's gone up. The village chief approaches Kaga, and takes him to his house where Kaga is offered to take his share of the equipment. But as Kaga looks around, he notices the equipment is switched, and informs the chief. Hearing so, the chief offers Kaga a room to rest as he looks into the matter. As he rests, Kaga thinks of returning and tries shouting all sorts of options, but realizes he is stuck there with no way back to his reality. The reality of the situation hits him as he realizes he is stuck there making the game his reality, and he did not just defeat characters, but actually killed people. As he freshens up, he accepts his reality, and is glad he experiences the situation early, as now he has to live doing the same, and can't lose his nerves. In the evening, the chief returns to him bringing the bandana thief forward. The chief asks Kaga to select a punishment for him, but Kaga decides not to interfere with the village policy, which upsets the chief, as the village policy is to sell off the thieves as slaves. Half the profit from that goes to the victim, and the other half to the family for losing a worker. The chief writes slave into the thief's intelligence card and sends him off. Also, the intelligence cards of the bandits are handed to Kaga to collect the bounties if the bandits had any on their heads. The chief also informs Kaga about the night station in Vale, and also that he can sell off his spoils in the market tomorrow while offering up a carriage. The next morning, Kaga leaves for Vale as the village provides him with everything for his services. He collects his bounty from the station, and moves forward where he realizes the atmosphere of the city has changed. The carriage rider informs him that they entered the unsafe ground of the city, which also contains brothels, which absolutely excites him. But first, they visit the slave trader Alan and sell off the villager. Alan, however, seems to find something fishy with Kaga. The rider leaves with the villager's share, leaving Kaga to wonder who he really is now. As he wonders about his identity, Alan calls for him again and offers to sell some slaves to him. Alan offers some pleasure slaves, which makes his mind boggle. Just then, a maid called Roxanne walks in with her jiggly honkers offering some tea. Alan notices Kaga is pleased with the maid and informs him that she is his most recommended slave, as she is a wolfkin and a beast warrior who can be useful in a labyrinth. He also informs Kaga that slaves don't betray their masters unless there is a will or inheritance criteria. They follow their masters to the grave, and those who run away are demoted to bandits who cannot complain about being killed. Alan persists more by adding that humans and non-humans can reproduce, and the maid is innocent and virgin and has given consent. Kaga is sold and asks how much, but the quoted price is too much for him, so he walks out to leave. Just then, he notices the maid and stops. Alan offers him 5 days to gather his funds. Kaga sets off with determination to make Roxanne his. 10 years later, Kaga returns to the stable he woke up in with his slaves. As he looks around, he spots a black-haired kid, which is not very common, called Mio. He thinks it's similar to his situation, and about the right age too. He has a flashback to his pleasure time with some women, and approaches the child. He learns that the kid's father died before he was born, and he lives with his mom. Kaga hands him a sword, and tells him to give it to his mom so that he can protect his mom. The boy hesitates at first, but takes the sword along with a life lesson from Kaga. Roxanne asks who the child is, to which he replies he met the child for the first time, but he believes he knew his father. The story comes back to today when Kaga is still collecting money for Roxanne. He thinks back to Alan's words where he believes exploring a labyrinth is more safe than bounty hunting. Kaga decides to explore a labyrinth but hides his sword as it is too powerful, and people might come after him for it. He heads into a shop to buy some gear, and finds that the shop owner does not seem to know the skill points of them. After shopping, he heads into the forest in search of the entrance, and sees some mages, and follows them to find the entrance. He changes his skill set, and sets into the labyrinth. He checks his job status, and notices Explorer. After he enters the labyrinth, he also notices his new skills like an item box to store weapons and dungeon walk to teleport into limited destinations. As he walks forward, he fights some tree monsters, and also uses the overwhelming skill which makes him flash-like. Seeing the slow-moving tree, he starts questioning his actions and thinks he would rather rest in a futon. He realizes that every time he uses spells, his MP drops, making him pessimistic. He decided to not use too much spell till his MP increases and finishes up his task by selling the branches from the monsters. He calculates his winning and realizes it's nowhere near what he needs, so he decides to stay in the labyrinth longer the next day. The next day he wakes up too early to see anything around him, so he teleports into the labyrinth. Just as he enters, he starts thinking negatively, so he kills some trees to gain MP. After all this, he thinks of moving deep into the labyrinth, but suddenly he stumbles upon a secret passageway in the wall. As he looks in, he sees something shining and wonders if it's a treasure, so he crawls towards it only to find a broken sword. Just then, the entryway closes, and he realizes it's not a treasure room, but a monster den. He fights them, as there is no way to escape. He uses spells while making up for the lost MP by killing and observing more and more. He collects a lot of branches and decides it is enough for today. While returning, he notices a crowd near a corpse, and while inspecting, he finds it a corpse of a bandit. He finds they are of the same group he killed, and also finds they are back to get revenge. This incident makes him realize that his labyrinth won't make him enough money in time, so he decides to risk his life to get close to Roxanne. Kaga returns to his room and thinks about his skill set to hunt bandits. He sets his skill sets and decides to walk from tomorrow. The next day, while searching for bandits, he hears people talking about bandits in the slums. He teleports into the slums. He looks around but finds none, and the stench there is something he could not handle, so he decides to look again at night. He returns to his room, and while cleaning himself, he notices he does not get pessimistic after spells may be due to the level increase in the labyrinth battle. At night, as he looks around, he stumbles upon a red light area. He tries his best to avoid entering any shop there. Just then, he spots a bandit. Kaga follows him into the slums and finds a group of bandits outside a house keeping watch. As he spies on them, he hears the name Hugo, who was the bandit he assassinated in the village. Hearing the name, he suspects they are from the same group and decides to spy more. He notices that they have their own territory, and guess if he attacks one territory, others won't interfere as they don't interact. After spying, he returns to his room where the owner offers him some dinner and some more information about the bandits having factions and the dispute being about succession. While thinking about all this, his mind diverts to Roxanne and on tasting her honkers. Later, he approaches a bandit to mooch out some information by showing him the bandit's scarf for a gold coin. The scarf lures him in and he invites Kaga into his room. But turns out it was all a trick to get the scarf. While they tussle each other, the bandit does spill some information, but also admits his plan of taking the bandana from him. Kaga, however, saw his moves coming from a mile away and burns the bandana in front of his eyes, and then kills the bandit. After doing so, he sneaks into the other room, and after identifying them all, kills them one by one for the bounty. He strategically kills 3 and takes their hand and teleport out of there as he notices other bandits noticing his actions. As the thinks back, he questions his action, yet at the same time defends it by saying he had no other options. Also, there are no police or laws protecting them in this world. He thinks about cashing the bounties, but hesitates as he does not want to attract attention towards himself. The next morning is the last day of getting Roxanne, so he goes to cash out the bounties. He succeeds in collecting the money, so he goes to get Roxanne. Roxanne greets him and first thing apologizes for doubting while waiting for him. After this, Alan forms a contract between the two, establishing their relationship, making Kaga Roxanne's owner, which makes Kaga ecstatic. Kaga books a double room for themselves. As they look around the room, he notices Roxanne's nervousness. But rather than making her comfortable, he asks to touch her ears. Even though he tries to suppress his desires, he gets addicted. Just then, she asks him if she should continue calling him master, which excites him even more. But this time, he controls himself and talks about the one-bed situations, which she replies with, "It was his request." He realizes his mistake and explains that he comes from a far land and is not familiar with this world's normal, and that he would appreciate her teaching him. He also informs her he would be taking her into the labyrinth, to which she seems rather confident. She starts settling down when Kaga realizes that she has been barefoot this whole time and gifts her a pair of shoes which seem a little big. This is where she teaches him that the equipments are made to fit the wearer, and suddenly the shoes becomes her size. Roxanne tells him she will treasure his first gift, making him emotional, that he hugs her, promising not to let her go. After this, they go equipment shopping for protective gear for her. Then, she makes him decide between two coats, which he passes by choosing the right one. Then he asks her if she wants anything else. Roxanne denies it at first, but as Kaga insists, she asks to buy some undergarments, making him excited again. That evening, they talk about using the same bed as Kaga wants to be considerate towards her. She also uses her old underwear as a rag to maintain their equipment. But the show ends quickly, making Kaga kind of disappointed. Later that night, at the time for bath comes, Kaga makes her scrub his back, trying to ease out the tension. But after him, as it's Roxanne's turn, she whips out her honkers, making Kaga nervous. While she sits down for her scrub, she informs him of being hairy at the back, which Kaga likes. While scrubbing her back, Kaga can't stop thinking about her peaks and proceeds to rub and worship them. Then suddenly he asks to wash her tail. While doing so, he notices it does not have a core and asks if she can move it, to which she shows him she can shake them by shaking her hips, and it moves involuntarily when she is happy. They wash each other's hair. While doing so, Kaga has a continuous view of her peaks, which makes him satisfied. But just then, he thinks view should not be the only thing that satisfies him, so he makes her remove all her clothes and invites her onto the bed. He starts by kissing her softly and advances to thread the needle. Next morning, as he is thinking about the weight of another person being so peaceful, Roxanne kisses him as per his instructions to kiss him before bed and in the morning. His sausage responds to her touch, but he decides to head into the labyrinth. While getting ready, he asks Roxanne about the way to add skill in his equipment, to which she suggests just buying the ones with skill, as adding skill to any equipment can be done through skill crystals rarely found in the labyrinth. Fusing the crystal with the equipment adds skill according to the strength of the blacksmith. She says that blacksmithing is a job unique to dwarves, so he isn't eligible for the blacksmithing skill. She also informs him that hiring a dwarf is a risky business, as they are known to make a fortune by pretending the fusion failed. He thinks of befriending a dwarf to the group. Then he gives Roxanne a leather armor, which makes her assets really flourish in the light, making him nervous. All set, they teleport to the labyrinth, which shocks Roxanne as she is not familiar with this magic. As they move forward, Roxanne guides him through and informs him about accumulating magic through magic crystal. Kaga understands the importance of it and decides to buy one later. Then they head ahead and encounter a monster, which Kaga takes out in a single blow, impressing Roxanne. They defeat a lot of monsters and head back. In the room, Kaga compliments her on her skills, to which she is really as before she used to be an outcast in the groups. Kaga asks her to sit and not wait for him to instruct her from now on. Roxanne says that she enjoys him playing with her ears. So he starts playing with them, and they remind him of grilled seaweed-wrapped mochi. He asks Roxanne if he can find it here, as they were his favorite homeland snacks, which strikes the question of whether he will return to his homeland someday. Kaga tells her he does not plan to return, and that he plans to keep her forever. However, he informs her that he plans to recruit other members to maximize the strength of the group. Roxanne agrees, which he interprets as her consenting to Harem. Later, Kaga buys 2 black magic crystals, to which Roxanne informs him that they change color according to the magic stored in them. Hearing so, Kaga takes her back to the labyrinth, where she suggests going up the floor, as the first level monsters are no match to him, which confuses Kaga as he thought the floors went down. Roxanne tells him that labyrinths are growing living creatures who lure people in them and defeat them through monsters and feed on their bodies. Labyrinths multiply as well. This brings Kaga to the thought of killing a labyrinth, which can be done by killing monsters at each level and reaching the highest floor. As he thinks more about it, he asks Roxanne about spells that attack all targets, but she seems not to know any. They defeat 10 monsters, turning Kaga's crystal red. Then he discovers a new spell that multiples his magic collection and turns his crystal purple. Roxanne is impressed once again. Kaga looks through his spells and finds a party setting, which he now uses, and discovers Roxanne's jobs. As he looks through, he finds that only healing abilities are left to be acquired. Roxanne tells him they can be acquired through fighting bare hands. Kaga lets Roxanne try that with his assistants, but nothing happens. So he tries by using a lower grade sword, which decreases his power, but Roxanne comes to his rescue with her impressive skills. They move forward and adjust and finally achieve the treating spell. After this, Kaga sets Roxanne's job as a monk, which again impresses her. Later that night, they honk all night. The next morning, they enter the next level of the labyrinth. The next day, while entering, Kaga learns only one group can fight a boss at a time. While explaining this, Roxanne seems eager to fight the boss. Just then, the door opens and they head in. While walking in, Roxanne tells him if they are lucky, they might find equipment from the last team if they were whipped out. The boss comes out and seems a little stronger than the creatures from before, but the two devour it with ease. While this, Roxanne gains a new job as an herbalist. Kaga notices Beast Attack as one of her skills, which seems to be very effective on monsters, but unfortunately Roxanne can't use it as it requires specific incantations. After discussing so, they move on to the end floor waiting room, but Kaga wonders if they can fight the first boss again so he can get the herbalist job too. In his attempt to go back, he accidentally comes out of the labyrinth, but to save face in front of Roxanne, he lies that it was an experiment. After all this, they head back to the first level, and somehow devour the boss. Kaga gains the job, and makes some medicines which turn out to be antidotes, leading him to discover some demons attacked with poison. They go to the guild and buy some medicines for themselves, where Kaga realizes he is quite good with math due to his merchant job, and got a 30% discount. After gaining the medicines, they head back to the labyrinth where they encounter two demons together. Although they do devour them, fighting situations put Kaga into thought of how they will handle groups as they multiply. While in the thought, Kaga suddenly pushes Roxanne onto a wall and asks her to observe a man staring at Alan's mansion. He informs her that the man is not a customer, but a bandit. They both inform Alan, which he takes lightly at first, but after hearing the man is a bandit, he informs Kaga that this situation relates to him and the boy he sold to Alan. Alan further explains that the boy was sold yesterday, and during the conversation, the people were asking the boy about the bandana. This raises a suspicion that the buyers were bandits as well, and the boy had connections with them prior. Alan seems to calm at the situation where he can be attacked by bandits, and/or could lose a slave. Kaga gets up to leave after seeing Alan's attitude, but Roxanne's worry about an old lady who took care of her makes him offer to work as a bodyguard. Alan agrees, and they strike a deal and leave. On their way out, Kaga and Roxanne have a moment, as she is thankful towards him for his efforts. Later in the night, Roxanne wakes Kaga up by shoving her tongue into his mouth, and they both get ready to stand guard. When they reach there, it seems unnecessary, as Alan's combat slaves look like they can take up 100 of Kaga's, so they just wait in the dark for some action. They hear some movements, and Alan takes the two upstairs to protect the salves and the one who can't fight. While standing guard, Kaga spots a bandit hiding in a room, so he approaches the room and casts a spell called Equivalent Exchange. He explains if the opponent has a higher MP, excessive MP would kill him, so he kept this spell to test out on an opponent whose MP he could predict. The spell does its job and the bandit explodes into nothing, but Kaga also falls to the ground as his MP is severely hit. Just then, Alan walks into the room, and Kaga gets scared that Alan might find it weird, but Alan suspects the bandit used a self-destructive orb. The results of the spell make Kaga cautious of the spell. After all this, Alan thanks Kaga for his efforts and gives him his reward, and they leave. On their way out, Kaga feels terrible and casts a teleporting spell to the labyrinth, which consumes his MP even more, but soon as he fights some demons, he recovers. After recovery, he checks his stats to see a positive impact of the spell, as he has gained spells for the 4 elements. He asks Roxanne more about the spells mages cast, because of which he figures out the fire orb spell and casts it, impressing Roxanne again. Kaga tries out certain variants of the spell and fights some demons, but one spell does not seem to work even though his MP was expensed. So they move on to the second floor. While attacking the second level demons, he learns a lot about magic and the kind of attack and defense each spell casts. While learning all this, he thinks that he wants to increase his level and reduce risk, as he wants to protect the delicate Roxanne. So he decides to use preliminary magic to combat and shares the thought with her, to which she gladly agrees. As they continue to fight, Kaga wishes his magic was stronger, and Roxanne recommends a staff which he decides to buy on the next market day, which is 4 days away. Just then, Roxanne recommends the Curatar, where there is a huge labyrinth, hence many permanent shops to service explorers. At the end of this conversation, they find themselves in the waiting room of the second level boss, and they try to attempt it and devour pretty quickly, and move on to the third floor. The third floor, they deal with kobold, who look somewhat like humans, but are very weak, so they fight them easily, and collect the cheapest item, that is salt, and a knife, which is a variety item. While they decide to head to the guild for the day when Roxanne displays a curiosity towards Kaga's level, which he reveals as 20, again impressing her. At the guild, they encounter people selling teleportation to the Imperial City, which Kaga pays for, as from there he can visit the Kuratar and travel for free the next time through his magic. However, as the returns, he falls into Roxanne's arm as he used too much MP. Then they return to their room for their regular deed of bathing each other, Kaga rubbing some honkers and boinking each other, which this time Roxanne asks harder. While doing so, Kaga thinks about buying a house where he does not have to worry about the next-door neighbor hearing them. The next day they visit Kuratar and see people paying entrance fees at the Labyrinth. They look around the market and find a hardware shop come real estate agency, which heightens the intensity of Kaga's thought of renting a house. Next, they visit a weapons shop where Kaga buys a wooden staff and some equipment. They head back to the hardware shop to look for living arrangements. The lady at the shop shows them a pretty huge house outside the city, smirking as he is an explorer. They both look through the house as the lady mentions that cemented walls cannot be used to teleport, but Kaga manages to find a way. After all the inspections, Kaga agrees to rent the house, and they return to the city to sign a contract. After all this, they buy some furniture and hardware for the house, shocking Roxanne as they teleported back into the cemented house. Later, they head back to the Labyrinth, and Kaga checks his new weapons out. After the fighting, they head back to the inn for a last night where they spend the night with their daily routine and say goodbye the next morning. Roxanne stays home cleaning, and Kaga heads out to check the Kuratar Labyrinth. After finding a place to teleport back home in the busy labyrinth, Kaga seems to be in the mood for some honking. Just then, their furniture delivery arrives, causing an inconvenience to his desires. After a whole day of arranging the furniture, Kaga and Roxanne sit in their new bed. While lying down, Kaga notices Roxanne's happy wag and pulls her in to test their new mattress. The next morning, Roxanne wakes Kaga up again by shoving her tongue into his mouth, which makes him want to stay in bed with her all day. But a degenerate lifestyle is not what he desires, so in order to continue living this way, they should head to the Labyrinth. As they make their way through the waiting room of the first floor, Kaga notices a huge amount to the crowd, and Roxanne explains that this is a very huge labyrinth, so people push to stay on the first floor as long as possible. She also informs him that this labyrinth's last boss has not been discovered, and the people have only been able to reach the 91st floor. Just then, the door opens, and it's their turn, but Kaga is pretty disappointed as the first booze is very slow and weak. As they move forward, Kaga loses motivation to fight due to the disappointment, so they go back home. Just as they reach, Roxanne asks him to rest as she does some gardening, but Kaga tags along. They get seeds and some tools, and make good fields for vegetables. After all the work, Roxanne suggests having a tub for washing clothes next time, so Kaga goes out to buy one, and some change of clothes for Roxanne. While shopping, he fantasizes about them taking a bath together, so he spends 2,000 nars in ordering one. The next day goes quite swiftly with some time in the labyrinth. At night, Kaga makes a white cream stew with the grain they got fighting in the labyrinth, which Roxanne really likes as she talks with the white stuff in her mouth. Some days go by the usual way, some fighting and exploring the powers of the new bosses, Roxanne discovering bread, and so on. One evening, Kaga and Roxanne wait at the front door for the tub to arrive, and Kaga takes it inside and fills it with his magic, while admitting he must be a pervert to do all this only to take a bath with Roxanne, which I totally agree with. While in the bath, and his most awaited moment comes with a naked Roxanne, he shows her soap, which he made himself, and uses it to wash her. He rubs her whole body till the point it looks like she is wearing clothes of bubbles. After this, he pulls her close, saying it is an efficient and traditional way of washing the bodies of two close men and women with less soap. Hearing so, Roxanne starts by undressing him and rubbing her whole body onto his. All this action makes Kaga's sausage erect, so she offers to rub his sausage squeaky clean as well. They soak in for some time and head to sleep. While Roxanne is fast asleep, Kaga is worried about the injuries she faced during the fight. Although he has a healing spell, he decided he cannot put all the pressure on her. So his solution is to put up more frontline fighters in his party. The next day they fight monsters on the 7th floor and gather rabbit pelts, which have a high demand in the clothing market. As they went early, they also find a treasure chest. They fight the rabbit boss, and it drops meat which Roxanne makes into a dish called Shima roast, which Kaga really enjoys. While at the labyrinth waiting room, they meet a guy who is fighting to buy slaves like Kaga did, But when it's their turn to enter the boss room, the boss is already waiting for them, which Kaga finds unusual. Later, he discovers the equipment of the man they met earlier, lying on the side as the boss defeated him. This makes him wonder about the value of their lives, as he merges his magic crystal with the man's crystal. That night, the thought of the man disappearing does not leave his mind even while he drills Roxanne so rough. He keeps on wondering about his future, as that could be him in the next step he takes. Roxanne notices him not sleeping and offers to cuddle to help him, which results in him sleeping peacefully, burying himself in between her mountains. The next, as they return to fight, he makes up his mind to make himself strong now, so that in the future, even if he steps onto a wrong plank, he will be strong enough to hold onto it. Kaga checks his item box and sees they have gathered 300 pelts, so they head on to the city to sell them. While doing so, Kaga also buys some sleepwear made of silk for Roxanne as a thanks for last night and his desires. That night, while preparing the bath, Kaga loses a lot of MP, so he decided to go to the Labyrinth, but while fighting, his overconfidence and seeing the same monsters leads him to get injured. Later, while bathing, as he thinks about his scratch, Roxanne gets worried, taking the opportunity he makes her suck his finger, which is scraped. Having this opportunity, he pretends his sausage also hurts and makes her suck it as he enjoys the pleasures of his life. After tub pleasures, they head onto the room where Roxanne tries on her new nightie, making him restless even more. They boink the night away. The next day of their usual fight, Kaga realizes he seriously needs to expand his group as it's getting difficult to fight the monsters. Just then, Roxanne calls him out of joy as she finds a green skill crystal. The next day, Kaga is thinking about finding a dwarf to merge the crystal with a weapon. Just then, Roxanne enters with breakfast, and Kaga shows his Yell's magic crystal, other shocking her as it was green till recently. Kaga explains it might be because he merged two crystals, and is thinking of selling it as it is sold for 1,000,000 nars. After realizing he will have enough money, he tells Roxanne that they will visit Alan because he wants to write a will for her freedom after his death. But Roxanne requests him not to do so if he trusts her, as she is a warrior and will protect him at any cost. Seeing her determination, he decided to drop the subject but asks her why. Roxanne explains he is a wonderful man with skills and kindness, and she believes he will achieve great things, to which he understands her, but makes it clear that he is not going to active greatness. More of he is not here to achieve greatness. Although this topic is dropped, they still decide to visit Alan as they need to expand their party for battle, to which Roxanne also agrees. Kaga thinks of getting a frontline warrior, especially a woman, as the idea of two women excites him. Although he does let Roxanne to join him while choosing, thinking if she denies he won't bring a woman. They visit Alan and discuss the matter. Kaga first questions if he can acquire a blacksmith, but as they are so rare, it is difficult to find and expensive. Hearing so, he asks for a dwarf, which Alan seems to have, but she seems to be unfit to fight. Hearing the dwarf is a girl, he asks Roxanne, to which she tells her they can always have a look first. They interview the dwarf called Sherry, who seems to have failed to become a blacksmith, and is very assertive to be considered. As Kaga learns about the process of becoming a blacksmith, he thinks she might be a good purchase, as her aptitude can be unlocked, like he learned his various jobs. Roxanne too considers her a good purchase, as she is not expensive, but thinks she might not be able to do much for a long time, so she suggests getting a confirmation about her age. She explains that dwarves' ears get thinner with age, and Sherry's ears were quite thin for 16. Alan re-enters, and Roxanne excuses herself to meet her caretaker. With her gone, Alan informs Kaga about Sherry's consent and her virginity. Kaga bargains Sherry's price quite smartly, and even ends up adding an outfit for a mere 177,800 nars. Just as the deal finalizes, Roxanne enters the room, and as Kaga informs her about the deal, her face seems to be clouded, but she pretends to be happy. As they form a contract, Roxanne establishes her position as a no-one slave and informs her that they have no problem with food, clothes, and house. Hearing this, Sherry tells her she thought Roxanne was Kaga's wife, flattering her. They return home, which brings back the confusion Roxanne had when she first met Kaga and Sherry. They order her to keep it a secret, which overwhelms her, but she agrees. After explaining, they head out shopping for Sherry. Roxanne gets an opportunity to flaunt her honkers. After a while, they get ready to go to the Labyrinth, and Kaga invites Sherry too. While getting ready, he asks her about skill slaughter that he sees, which she explains is just a theory in this world. He also learns that adventurer jobs are rare. They head to the 5HT floor, where Kaga tries to flaunt his skill, but Sherry seems to be impressed with Roxanne more. When they return, Sherry notices that Kaga uses magic without incantations, which confused her. She asks him about his level, which he reveals as 33, which shocks Roxanne as well as she thought he is still 20. They discuss his capabilities, which he orders them to hide. Later at dinner time, they ask Sherry to sit with them and eat. Kaga starts to serve the food he serves him first, and is about to serve Sherry, but he feels Roxanne's gaze piercing his skin, so he serves her first, making her happy. While they eat, Kaga asks them if their species have what is a human special job, hearing which they both blush. Sherry informs him that human desires can grow to a mighty amount, so their special job is boinking maniacs, making himself think about what is wrong with humans. After a while at bath time, Kaga's perverted side comes out as he invites both of them to bath together. He uses soap to rub both of their honkers, and then Roxanne teaches Sherry to rub Kaga with her body to wash him. As they get into the bath, Kaga enjoys the luxuries of his life. He takes them both to the room and orders Sherry also to kiss him before he sleeps, and after he wakes up. After ordering, he kisses her before Roxanne, thinking he made a mistake, he makes up by telling her she will be the last one to kiss him, as she is the first slave. After this, he boinks both of them, having a three-way road to luxury. After Kaga is asleep, they both have a moment and tell each other that they look forward to working with each other. The next morning, Kaga look at his stats to find that he got Sex Maniac added to his job list and gained a new attack. The new morning makes him think if his desires grow, he will allow it and make himself a slave's harem. So he goes on to buy more girls. Subscribe for more videos like this. Turn on the notification and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.